President and White House escalated a war of words today with Georgia Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff. At issue, the senator's remarks about the White House ballroom and a devoted presidential aide known by some as the human printer. Senator Ossoff, who's seen as a possible 2028 presidential candidate, is currently running for re-election and said this at a campaign appearance yesterday.
While the sailors on the Lincoln fight his war, while he fruitlessly drains our munitions and oil reserves, the president sleeps through his meetings. He golfs and trades stocks. See, he doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace.
Well, Natalie is Natalie Harp, a close White House aide who often stays up late with the president, helping him post on social media. She also spends her time printing up flattering mentions of the president for him, sometimes with a portable printer on the golf course. She was one of only a few people the president took with him aboard the secret plane when he left the NATO summit in Turkey, while others, including Secretary of State Rubio and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, rode on the decoy plane. Today, CNN's Kristen Holmes asked the president about what Senator Ossoff said.
What is your response, Jon Ossoff?
You mean Pee Wee Herman? Pee Wee Herman lookalike? No, I would much rather do other things. We're building a great facility here. The whole building, the White House, was let go. The exteriors were falling apart. The columns were falling apart. The whole place was a mess. In addition, they've been trying to get a ballroom for the last 150 years.
So to a question about Senator Ossoff's criticism of his preoccupation with the ballroom, the president steered his answer, which went on for several minutes longer, back to the ballroom.
We'd love to have 2,000 people coming to dinner and celebrating a nice evening, et cetera, but we only have a room that's going to hold 89 people, and 89 people is not appropriate. So maybe more importantly, it's totally secure with bulletproof windows, bulletproof sides. It's drone-proof, it's missile, every at the top of the line. And we need it, and especially with what's happened, unfortunately, to the world, you could say.
You know, you could say, and he did say, in addition to calling Senator Ossoff Pee Wee Herman, his White House communications director, Stephen Chung, also went after Ossoff, as did another White House press official who posted this on social media. Jon Ossoff is a cringeworthy feminine theater kid cosplaying as Barack Obama. Nobody gives a S what this lightweight loser says. Nobody cares, allegedly, but they all made sure to respond. Joining us now, New York Times White House correspondent Maggie Haberman, co-author with Jonathan Swan of the bestseller Regime Change. So, Maggie, you've reported extensively on the president's working relationship with Natalie Harp in your book. How do you see this reaction from him and the White House communications team?
Well, I didn't see the president actually respond to this at all. In terms of the White House communications team, I think that there's two potential ways to look at this. One is that Ossoff actually is a talented politician. It doesn't hurt Democrats to be compared to Barack Obama. He's still a pretty popular politician, particularly among Democrats, number one. But number two, Ossoff is both in the lead in Georgia, which is a key state in terms of his reelection, and separately, he is seen as a front runner potentially for 2028. It depends on who you talk to in the White House as to how much any of them are actually focused on what could advance 2028. But they do seem happy to have something to try to rally their own voters against and are taking any opportunity. The separate piece on Natalie Harp, look, we reported in our book that she is completely devoted to Trump. She left letters in his personal spaces during the campaign, one of which said, "You are all that matters to me." She, her interest in him and those letters alarmed the Secret Service at the time. As we reported, Trump has told people around him that, she's the only staffer who loves him as much as his wife and children. That you'll all go off and leave me and make money, and she'll never leave me. She's a taxpayer-paid staffer in the White House. So, I'm not going to get into what Ossoff insinuated about her. That goes beyond our reporting, but it is certainly legitimate to ask about staff in the White House.
What do you make of Ossoff's comments and the reaction to it?
I think Ossoff went too far, actually. Trump has been known from the beginning of time, including his television show, his business at the Trump Organization, his involvement in beauty pageants. He always surrounds himself with attractive young women. And for somebody running for office to make that an issue amongst all the other problems, to point that at, I can think of a lot more complaints about Trump than him traveling with a young aide. So I think it was sort of below the bar. But then again, the White House's reaction was kind of despicable. It was like a bunch of frat boys defending the frat house president and lobbying these names, calling him a Democrat and all the other things, that, the thing about the theatrical, feminine theatrical boy. It's embarrassing that White House spokespeople are behaving this way to defend the president.
I really disagree with you, Stacey, but I think you're wrong on this one. He mentioned one word, the first name of Natalie Harp. He didn't even mention her last name. And he didn't talk about her directly. He mentioned the fact that Trump would prefer to travel on his plane with her than to do the job he's supposed to do as president. That's a factual statement. It's not below the belt, like Trump's repeated attacks on Donald Trump. What the problem that Jon Ossoff is pointing out here is that Donald Trump is obsessed about the White House ballroom. He's obsessed about the reflecting pool. He's obsessed about the gold ornaments in the Oval Office. He's not obsessed about the American people paying $4 a gallon for gasoline. He's not obsessed about rising inflation. He's not doing anything about health care and jobs, the things that he's supposed to be taking care of. And that's the problem. And I think that's what Jon Ossoff is pointing out here. And I think he's exactly right to make that attack.
I think
Democrats need to stop being defensive about this stuff and start fighting back, and fighting back hard, because Trump doesn't play pussyfoot. He plays hard. And we need to fight back as well.
But it's a lame fight. Wouldn't you agree?
It's not lame.
It's not
lame at all.
Donald Trump threw that name in. Look, there are a million things you could complain about.
He talked about all those things.
But to throw in the young woman,
but don't take the bait,
who's his
Stacey.
aide.
Don't take the bait. Just because he mentioned Natalie's
Trump
name
took the
once.
bait.
Trump did take the bait.
And that's their fault.
Jon Ossoff is doing exactly what Democrats need to do. They need to fight back hard and stop playing around, stop being defensive.
I mean, Trump made her an issue when he took her instead of Carolyn Levitt, who clearly has a more important job. So if anybody should be complaining about why she's a national figure, it's because of Trump's action, taking her to that decoy plane. And Natalie Harp isn't just maybe his human printer, as they also call her. Evidently, she's kind of a gateway to a lot of information. And if you want information passed to him, so perhaps he stops liking somebody, evidently she's the gatekeeper. So that makes her part of the conversation in a real way.
So let me play. This is Ossoff talking about his comments tonight and explaining a little bit more about what he meant. Listen.
Well, I've heard this particular aide referred to as his security blanket. And I think we could say that about any number of the senior aides in the White House. They're not telling him what he needs to hear. They're telling him what he wants to hear. And the president, surrounded by enablers in the West Wing, is playing golf, is trading stock, and is decorating his ballroom. It's a disgrace, all while American families in Georgia and across the country pay more for just about everything as a direct result of his failed economic policy and his failed foreign policy.
So he says what he was referring to was Harp's role as somebody who actually is there to kind of feed Trump things that he likes to hear, whether it's true or not. I also wonder, Bill, why the freak out? I mean, I've rarely seen the White House in this kind of form. And I can imagine that some of it has to do with this is actually somebody who's legitimately very important to the president, which kind of speaks to what Jon Ossoff's saying.
The follow-up there from the senator should have been an apology, because I agree. It was below the belt. The reason for the freak out,
You work for Donald Trump. You work for Donald Trump. How dare you say anything is below the belt when you work for Donald Trump in the White House?
The reason for the freak out by the Trump administration is because it was below the belt. Staff was
What about all the things Donald Trump repeatedly goes below the belt.
Jon Ossoff ran for office. Donald Trump ran for office. Criticize them, put a spotlight on them, talk about them.
She's a government
first name. She is a government staffer.
She was on the plane with them when they left Turkey. He just mentioned it.
She's a private person.
She's not a private person. If you want
her name's never been on a ballot.
If you want to be traveling to the
You're
president,
describing her as a private person. She does work for the government.
A lot of people work for the government.
What about Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss? They're private people. Donald Trump attacked those election workers in Fulton County. They had no business being involved in his scandal. But Donald Trump brought them up.
You want to talk about 2020?
I want to talk about the fact that Donald Trump repeatedly for 30 years and definitely for the past 10 years has attacked every single person. You work for him in the White House while he attacked people with attacks that are far lower than what Jon Ossoff said. All he did was mention one person's name. And so for you to come here and have this fake outrage about Jon Ossoff, it's outrageous.
Jon Ossoff is better than this.
You are better than SIC because you have no credibility.
No, my point also is like why.
Speaking of taking the bait, okay? Speaking of taking the bait, Jon Ossoff is running for Senate, okay, people. He is leading, it seems, in the latest poll that we use by a lot. So he's kind of cruising, I guess, in the Senate race. And if I were a Jon Ossoff and I wanted to get a lot of attention, I would say something that like this, that would get me a lot of attention and get the White House to be talking about me for like 48 hours. So who's taking the bait here?
Clearly the president took the bait. When he was asked the question in the Oval Office, what do you think? The most powerful thing he could have said is, I don't think of Jon Ossoff. That's the most powerful thing he could say. It's like, he's meaningless to me. As you said, it's not even a close race, so it's not like this neck and neck thing. So the most powerful thing he could have said is, I don't think of him, and just moved on. But instead, the Pee Wee Herman thing I thought was pretty good. Just because he's a handsome guy, but he does lean towards Pee Wee. But look, this saddens me. You know, there's a clip on Facebook showing Barack Obama and John McCain, and how when people ragged on each other, but they both came to each other's defense. And all the way down the road, like, those days are gone, unfortunately.
Thanks to Donald Trump.
So this is not just
well,
it's not just
responsible for it, though.
Yes, anyone who says he's not
right,
have their
exactly.
head in the sand. But it's a shame that, look, and here's where I disagree with you on. Yes, he's obsessed about the ballroom, which he won't even use. It'll be his legacy. But you can't say he's not obsessed about Iran. You can't say affordability is just because of the war, because my mayor, Mamdani, ran on affordability before there was any war. So the affordability issue has been going on way before Iran.
I didn't say it was just about the war. I said the fact that he's not focused on the issues the American people are concerned about. He cares more about the ballroom than he does about inflation or gas prices.
He can't even stay
He
up for
definitely
his
cares
meetings.
about the gas prices. You know he cares about it. You know he's focused on the
What
gas
is he doing
prices.
about it? He's creating a worse crisis with it.